Hey, what's going on, everybody? Steven Christopher here, founder of Wit Digital, with my friend Tersh Blissett, the owner of Service Emperor, which was previously Icebound, and who has been in the HVAC industry since Cinco de Mayo of 2005. And Tersh is awesome. We've been friends for a long time, and Tersh runs an amazing podcast that helps so many. I know, at least for me, a lot of times I get calls for people, for home service companies that are looking for digital marketing. And when I ask how they heard about us, they say this guy's podcast. So Tersh is doing a ton of great stuff. And I think today, this is going to be released on all kinds of platforms. So maybe you're listening to it on Tersh's actual podcast. Maybe it's on YouTube, maybe it's wherever. But I had the idea the other day when he and I were talking to interview him about being a virtual home service company, because it's prior to coronavirus, there wasn't very many people thinking about running a virtual home service company. And now I'm feeling that there's a lot of people out there saying like, okay, wait a minute, how do we become even just a little bit more virtual? And I think probably on the tail end of this, there's going to be a lot of people saying, okay, I need to just create a more virtual company that's sustainable through times like this, if we ever go through anything similar. So that's kind of where this was born from, was flip the tables on Tersh a little bit and ask the master who has mastered creating a virtual home service company how he did it. Because I think there's a lot of little things that when you look back, you don't even know that maybe you did. And so that's our objective here today. So I don't know, I guess, Tersh, welcome to your own show.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. No, honestly, I thank you for taking time out of your day, because, you could be doing something else, like running your company that's extremely successful, and taking that time out and interviewing us and interviewing me, and so that we can share with the audience basically what's worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. And like you said, we were talking the other day, and there were a lot of things that I'd forgotten that I even did, because it just came so natural. Pain points that people are having right now, we figured those out 2 years ago. And 2 years prior to that, I have another HVAC company, and I wanted that company to go virtual. I have a business partner with that company, and he wasn't really interested in that. So I had already started ideas, and I thought of things that could make us more efficient back in 2014. And so a lot of that stems from all of that.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think one of the most important things that I heard you say when we were kind of prepping for this was you were intentional. Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because I think what people might generally think right now, especially in the home service industry, is that it's always been done this way. You've got to have a big shop. You've got to have a warehouse. You've got to have somewhere for people to come. And that's the mindset that pretty much everybody in the industry has. And when I asked you, why did you do this? Your answer pretty much was like, well, we desired to do it. And so then we were very intentional about it. So talk just for a minute about that.
So originally, I just with Icebound and now what is now Service Emperor, we always knew that we wanted to be virtual. And over time, I've worked and I've created a plan to where we can stay remote and virtual to about the $8 million mark. And I think we can go further, but there's a few hiccups that I'm sure technology will have solved by the time we get to that point. And so like every time there's a decision that's made, there's never one of those situations where you're like, all right, fine, I'm just going to get an office so that, we don't have that problem anymore. It's just, okay, well, how do we figure it out? It's like we burn the ships. The office isn't even an option. We're not even thinking about having an office. It's always very intentional. Like we're going to be remote, and that's it.
That's awesome, man. And I think that's important everywhere in business and in life, right? Like
Yeah.
anything is possible
Mm-hmm.
if we really desire to do it. And so I think that's just a really great message of be intentional, burn the boats. Like we are a virtual home service company, period. And we will find a way to solve every problem. So starting with that mindset is huge.
Yeah, a lot of times people will say nobody will come to work for me if I don't have a workshop, if I don't have a warehouse. And I had a friend of mine, that guy that I actually got Icebound from. He had a 2,500 square foot warehouse, and he leased that because he didn't think that anybody would come apply for the job. Nobody would come work for him with him not having it, with him working out of his house, working out of his garage, and not having a workshop. And come to find out, not much changed other than having to pay $2,500 a month for a warehouse. He still didn't have a lot of guys coming to beat down his door, to come work for him. Still had the same struggles. And I truly believe that that's more of a mindset issue than it is, like, as an owner, is their internal issue more so than somebody that comes to work for you. And like, flat out, I just tell our team, we don't have to pay $2,500. So guess who gets that $2,500? You do. We get to spend that money more on you and building our culture.
I love that. Yeah, it's just like everything in life, right? Like I'm a firm believer that thoughts become things. So if we think we can't, then we're right.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah. I agree.
You know what? I think that was Henry Ford, right? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right.
Exactly.
So that's super cool. All right, well, let's get into some of the specifics about how you guys run the business and maybe some of the things that you ran into, solved already, and hopefully these will help people that are struggling right now, that just don't have this information or didn't have a plan in place for dealing with coronavirus, and maybe some really cool opportunities in the future to move more virtual. So as I think through kind of the process, I think let's go this way. Let's kind of go through from like leads coming in, and then we'll go through how do you handle it in the office, to how do you handle deliverables, to how do you handle some of the logistics. That way it kind of flows. So let's start first with the brand of the company, marketing of the company, and some of those logistics. Like, how are we getting leads, and what issues do some other people think that they might have if they don't have a physical office? So have you ever run up against any issues when it comes to actual customers? Do you have some sort of a way that you're communicating that, or is it not even an issue?
It's not. It's a null point. People are like, well, how about the people that come to your shop? I've never had anybody ask me where our shop's located. We had one client, a commercial client, because they wanted to deliver a package unit to it. And it was like, just tell us when you're going to deliver it. We'll have a guy on the job site and we'll pick it up on the roof right then. Like, we'll work our schedule around when it's going to deliver to your shop. Or to your location. So other than that, there's no reason for them to come to our office. Sometimes they're like, well, we want somebody that's local. Well, how much more local is the president of the Small Business Chamber of Savannah? Like, we're on the executive board for Buy Local of Savannah. We are a local company, so that you can't say, well, you're not a local company because you don't have a local business, a brick and mortar local business. So we're very active in the neighborhood and the city and everything else. So, I mean, we're seen as a very local authority anyways. So GMB marketing, you handle a lot of that. So you could probably answer way more about that than I can. But when it comes to the brand, it's just, we're Service Emperor. We're here to serve. We're here to serve you. And as long as we express that in our marketing, we geotag Savannah and Pooler and all that stuff in our marketing aspects. And then I kind of let you handle the rest of it.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, we won't get too technical into marketing. Really the only difference is on Google My Business, you can put an address, whatever address you physically used in order to get it verified. And then you can just mark, hide my address, and we serve customers in either these zip codes or this specific radius.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the end of that.
That's used to, it was very important. But like, as you know, that went away, especially once you were able to check that box and say, well, we service these counties and these cities or whatever. That kind of nullified people having to get these ghost boxes and like renting these small spaces and stuff.
Yeah. So how do you deal with mail? Like, I don't know, bills and stuff like that.
So we have, first off, we mainly get electronic emails for most of our stuff. If we have to get something in the mail, it'll either get sent to my house, or we do have a PO box that it can go to. So,
okay, cool. So communicating with customers, it's just really not that big of a deal. Again, I think that's a mindset thing, right? It's a limiting belief if you think, oh, well, customers aren't going to use us because we don't have a physical brick and mortar location. I mean, really, they have no reason to ever go to a local home service company. No reason to go to a plumbing or HVAC company. So that's great as far as marketing goes. And then, so we generate leads, we get the calls coming in. CSR team. How do you work with a CSR team? How do you work with your CSR team?
So we use a VoIP system, voice over IP phone system, and it goes to each person's cell phone. Or, I mean, we have desktop phones that we'll give to a CSR if they would rather use that versus a cell phone, and it just hooks right up into their computer, and the phone comes through there. And so as soon as the call comes in, it goes through the VoIP, and it distributes to each person automatically. And most people assume that we're just sitting in the office next to each other, and they're like, hey, can I talk to so-and-so? I say, oh, hang on a second, let me transfer you over, and transfer it. And then it comes to my cell phone, and I answer it. And it, because it populates as Service Emperor's phone number, I know that it's the Service Emperor, so then I know how to answer the phone versus it being one of my friends that calls in. That's awesome. Can you share what platform you use in case somebody's interested, or do you like it? There's a lot of them out there. We use Jive, JIVE.com. It's not expensive at all, but it's got a lot, like your dial plans. You can set it up so that at this time, this person never gets called. At this time, it automatically rolls over to this person. It can go to a call center. If it rings more than 3 times, it goes to a call center. And so we have a couple of redundancies set up in there. Awesome. So one thing that I can hear people saying right now is, how do you know your CSRs are doing a good job? How do you know they're like actually working and answering the phone in the moment? Like, how do you build connection with them in a normal workday? So similar to the way that we're connecting right now. So we have Zoom set up, and we have Zoom channels set up. So the CSRs can have the video just basically on them all day. Their microphone's on mute. And if they have a question, they can either go in the chat bar and say, hey, I have a question about this, or wave their hand or whatever. And, you can see each other and then communicate from there, and, get your questions answered, which is really cool because that's one aspect of it. So, but we can screen share at that point. And so over the screen share, we're like, oh yeah, well, here's your problem. Just go over to there, and then you just work through it. And so you're doing a little training at the same time. The other part of it is every single phone call is recorded. And every phone call has to be set in its, I forget what Julie calls it. It's got to be set in its area. So whether this was a spam call or it's a potential client or a previous client. And so it has to be moved around at the end of the day. And so every phone call is listened to at that point. So then you have coaching possibilities going on all day long. Dude, when you told me that, I was blown away. Like, in my mind, I was like, how can you deal with a team of CSRs
that are working from, home, and your answer of like, oh yeah, well, we just have Zoom. Like when they come in the morning, they turn on their Zoom, like they sit down, it's just like being at work. And I think there's a really cool level of accountability there too, right? Like it would help me at least remember, oh wait, I'm at work right now. And I'm, even though I might be at home, like I'm physically here at work. And I think the other cool thing that maybe it does, and maybe you can elaborate on it, if so, is it creates a sense of connection and culture. Because I think that's one thing we're going to talk about is how do you build a culture in a workplace where you don't get as much human interaction. But I mean, have you ever had any issues where, like when you're hiring a CSR or something like that, where overcoming that type of
we get that look. A lot of times it's a selling factor for a CSR. Before all the schools were closed down and everything, one of the things that a lot of stay-at-home moms were dealing with was like, I have a solid 6 hours during the middle of the day that I don't have anything to do other than keep the house straight, and but I can't get an 8-hour job because it usually takes 9 to 10 hours. Well, I can't drop my kids off at school and then go to work and then go pick my kids up. So we used it as a selling tool to come on board with us. We're like, work from home, and then take your 15-minute break to go take your kids to school in the morning, and then 15 minutes at the end of the day to bring your kids home or whatever, or 30 minutes if you needed a full hour for lunch or whatever. And that'd be it. And then work from home the rest of the time. And so, but now everybody's at home, but it's still, and even that's not crazy because everybody's learned to deal with, people hear kids in the background. Our kids know that as soon as a phone rings, they're just like, psh, they're quiet. And that's because they've been trained since birth to do that, because we've owned the businesses since before they were all born. But people are just used to hearing kids in the background because they know that all the kids are out of school right now. But even before then, people were so understanding. Like they didn't even ask. They just assumed that the kid was sick and was at home, or was at sick and at the office, or bring a kid to work day type thing. But so it's never really been a moot point. Only thing that we ask is that, you make sure you have a quiet spot. You can't be setting up your laptop or whatever in the middle of the living room. It needs to be we need a quiet spot, whether it's in your office, like you have a home office, or you're like a corner in your bedroom that you can just be quiet all day long and just work. That's what we ask. We don't want you sitting on your bed because then you just start dozing off, that type of stuff. So it's one of those things where we're very intentional with it. And it was some trial and error. We didn't nail it the first time that we did it. And that's the thing about anything new. You're not going to nail it the first time that it happens. So I listened to a ton of podcasts on different companies that were 100% remote. And then I was like, okay, that's a cool idea. I'm going to take that one. That's a cool idea. Let me do that. And so there was this one company that works 100% remote, and they like everything that we did. Like I just listened to that same episode like 4 or 5 times because I was like, oh yes, I need to do that and that and that and that. And so that's where I got the idea of Slack and working using Zoom and all that stuff. And then we even started to pivot towards other programs that for communication that are like a Facebook feed called Ohana. And it's even more builds culture. We'll go into that later, but we're very intentional about everything. And then like Wendy, our most recent hire, we didn't tell her until after she accepted the job that we don't even have an office. And she was just a great fit. Julie was doing the entire hiring process, and we never even had that conversation. She was like, so where do I go to? Because we do hiring events where it's like, it could be 10 people in one room, and one's the service getting hired for a service tech, one's for CSR, one's for a dispatcher, one's for an installer, one's for anything. And so we're doing that entire hiring event, and nobody asked where the office was in the entire hiring event. And we never said it. And it wasn't intentional. It was just like, it was one of those things where like, hey, we need 2 service techs and a dispatcher. let's do a hiring event. And we got it going, and we were just like rolling through it. And I was actually catching calls because we had so many calls rolling in that particular week. And so I left straight from that event. And so she was like, "Oh, really?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, sorry. Do you have internet?" And so like we get laptops for them. We were like, "Yeah, we're getting you a laptop, and give you a laptop, and you just hook it up to the internet, and then go through the process of that." But that was kind of our hiccup on that. It's like beforehand we had always had the conversation because it was so new and it was so like outside the box. Even on the hiring packet, it was, "Hey, do you want to be work from home, blah blah blah." We sold that aspect of it more so than even like what your requirements should be. And Wendy, she actually came from another company up in a different area. She moved into town, and she actually sought us out because of our reviews and like our culture. She could see our culture online, and she sought us out and applied for the job, and then did a hiring event at one of our customers, coffee shops. And so she never even came to the shop, and that conversation never happened.
That's awesome, man.
It's so weird.
Yeah, it's funny, right? How we forget. It becomes normal. I mean, just like why we're doing this interview, it's what's normal for you is not normal for 99% of the other people out there. And, one big takeaway on that part that I get out of this is not having an office. You can look at the things that you have to overcome by not having, giving somebody an office address and having them go there. But on the flip side of it, it probably opens up your pool of candidates quite a bit more.
There's literally, you could be anywhere in the country and be one of our CSRs.
Yeah, great point. And I wasn't even thinking that big, but that's a great point. I was just thinking like you said, a stay-at-home mom that maybe only has 6 hours and then needs a break on each side. Those could be some of your best candidates. Mm-hmm. But if you have an office and you got to do 9 to 6 or 9 to 5, you don't get access to those people.
So one thing that I have found, and if anybody's listening is considering doing that exact same thing, is you may want to not do as soon as they pull in the driveway from dropping off their kids to as soon as they leave to get their kids. Once all this is all done and all the kids are gone, you may want to truly have them part-time. Hire 2 people that are working 4 hours. So like wait 30 minutes after you've gotten home, you've gotten unfrazzled, because usually stay-at-home moms are not used to going straight into work. And so what we've experienced is whenever they take that job and it fills that whole time gap up in the middle, they no longer have time to do the things that they did before that they forgot that they had done because it became so natural. So like laundry wasn't getting done. And so we had one girl that was super stressed out because she couldn't mop her floor. She couldn't do her laundry and all this other stuff that she had normally done, but she had forgotten that she was doing it during the middle of the day. So I would challenge you to like say, okay, well, we'll hire you for 4 hours and then like slowly transition them into working that. And because you can hire 2 people at 4 hours, a day. And then especially if you can hire 2 at the same time, and then you can test them off of each other. You can watch their numbers, and you might have one that becomes a super rock star and, wants to work more, and especially if they get spiffed off of stuff. And then the other one might say they want to keep it 4 hours, or they might just say, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. So one thing that I didn't mention, and I don't even think that we've ever talked about this, the challenge that we had, and a lot of friends. So we're in a small group that I just finished a few minutes ago before we got started with other business owners that I lead, and they're having to go remote. And we were talking, and one of the things that they were talking about that they really had a struggle with was they didn't have a clear org chart. They were at like 20 service techs, and their org chart, like when the tech came in the morning, they would pass something by that person and then that person and that person. And it was just like along the way in the morning, somebody would get it and send it to somebody else along the way. Well, since they're working remote, that org chart's not there. There's no like, who do I talk to? You have to have a very deliberate chain of command org chart. If you're going to talk to this person, if you have this problem, you need to go to this person. If you have a problem in this department, you need to go to this person. Like if you have a problem with a service call, like the actual call, how it was put in, you wouldn't bring that to me. you would take that to Julie because she's the office manager. She's the admin over like the dispatcher, CSR. If you have a technical issue, like there's something inside of our CRM that is wrong, you would bring that to me. I'd take care of that for you. So having that direct chain of command and who to go to when anything happens, that'll save a lot of heartache. We lost employees over it, but I forgot about it until our call that we had today. Like I've forgotten that we had to clear that org chart up. And so now it's top of mind for me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I bet there's going to be so many little things like that come up. And, maybe after this, we'll get a lot of questions from people. And if they desire, maybe we can do a follow-up. I know this is fun for me. So let's move down into training. So this goes, company wide, right? So you mentioned the org chart, making sure you have it. So, you have your CSRs, office managers, technicians. How do you do training? How do you do training for new and ongoing?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's virtual, online.
So, all right.
So we use
CSRs, right? CSRs, that's pretty easy. I get that. Virtual. You just kind of doing it over Zoom, going through your training, having those calls, listening to calls, giving feedback. That makes sense. That's relatively simple. Technicians. Okay,
so we use the virtual reality training platform that you train completely virtual reality, and it's called Interplay Learning. That's the platform that we use, and they can actually. So we have one platform that's VR, but it costs about $2,000 for the computer and the goggles to set it up and everything. So, but you can still do it in 2D also. So you don't have to have the VR goggles. You can still click on your computer. So we train people first off up front with that. So we had one guy that was a diesel mechanic, and he trained for a month. And at the end of the month, he was able to go be a ride along, but be the lead tech on maintenance calls. And so he could do maintenance calls within a month. He was mechanically inclined. He could talk to people. But yeah, in a month he could go make money for me. So, wow. and he did everything virtual reality from home. So for that entire month, I paid him to stay home and train on the computer. And it tracks your time. It tracks how many tests you've taken, how long you watched the video before you took the test, how many questions you got right and wrong, and then how many times you took the test after the fact to get the right answers. And then you get points based off of that. So we use that a lot. And then so every Thursday is the technician training Zoom call. And so one tech has to teach everybody else in the company how a part works, how to diagnose it, when you know it's bad, when you know it needs to be replaced, and then kind of go from there. And so each technician has a round robin over Zoom, and teach us all how to diagnose everything. So the only way that you're going to get up there and not look like a fool by teaching everybody else is you're going to learn how it works. So I purposely will pick out a part that I know that they've either misdiagnosed in the past or had trouble diagnosing it in the past, called me for tech support or something like that. And that's the part they're going to teach everybody else how it works.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, the best way to learn something is to teach it to others. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah. And I think, this is outside of kind of the topic of conversation, but it's somewhat in line, is so many managers teach at people, right? They stand up in front of a classroom or whatever, show them over and over and over, but they miss out on the fact that the best way to learn something is to teach it. So make sure you have you're teaching somebody how to do it. You have them walk you through it, and then you have them show you that they can do it.
Yeah, it's something. Well, my wife beats into my head all the time, whether her being a nurse and at the hospital, they're always, what is it? Show, teach, and then watch. And so like they'll show them how to do something, and then they'll teach them like the aspect of why they did it. This is how we did it. Now you have to show me how you did it, and then you go evaluate. So as she's evaluating, whenever they're doing it, so that's how we do it. So it's the same thing. I'm gonna show you how I did it, and I'm gonna teach you how I did it, and then you're going to show me how I did it, and then I'm going to evaluate how you did. And if we need to redo the process, then we'll go back and redo the process again. If we don't, if you're good, then good. Move on.
So awesome, man. Okay, so we got marketing, we got leads coming in, we got CSRs, we got training. Now, kind of getting into the technician side of things. What about things like dispatching, call board, and this next step of getting the technician to the home and actually delivering the product? Is there anything different there that you guys are doing?
Well, that in 2014, that was my hurdle. Like it was going to be, because everything was on your desktop, it was on your server. You had great programs like Desco and ESC, but they were all like in the office type programs. And then in 2015, I believe it was 2014, 15, Service Titan came out. They were cloud-based. Then Field Edge, which was ESC, moved to the cloud, and they were cloud-based. And so I was like, okay, that solves that problem completely. Problem solved. But now, if you asked what CRMs out there, like you can't, like you shake a stick, you're going to hit 1,000 of them. Like they're everywhere. These CRMs that are in the cloud, they're all cloud-based. They're ones. No one CRM solves the problem for every single company. So I'll tell you what I'm using, but do know that it doesn't solve everybody's problem. And then some other ones that didn't solve my problems will solve your problems. And it's all because of how you run your company. So we just transitioned from Service Titan over to ThermoGrid. Service Titan's a great program. But ThermoGrid just had a few more features that were more great to us, the best way to say it. And so we swapped over to ThermoGrid, and it's literally your recorded phone call between your CSR and the client that they talk to is loaded to the service call. So that phone call, the service tech, before they go to the house to be dispatched, or before they're dispatched to the house, they listen to the phone call and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I understand what's going on. It's even like that feature makes it so that you can even better understand what's going on before you even get out there. And the dispatcher may have written it down completely different. And that happens all the time where they don't know. They're not a service expert. They don't know what to write down in that scenario. So they're like, yeah, so that's actually not what happened. Like based off what I was listening to, you're in the wrong side of the house. Like we're working on the outdoor unit. You're writing down stuff for the indoor unit. So that's cool because you're not misdirected into the wrong direction. You should go in with your blinders on anyways, but sometimes you don't do that. So as a tech, it's really helpful to be able to hear that kind of stuff. But all of the call boards and everything, they're all in the cloud. Everybody has it on their laptop. So everybody has access to see the entire schedule. Like all of the office staff have access to see the entire schedule. The service expert, all their stuff comes to their tablet. Everything, financing is completely paperless. It goes through a tablet. Credit cards, completely paperless. I mean, there's no scan anything. It's like you have your card there. They have little scanners, but then they don't have to write down anything. They don't have to save anything. Everything's encrypted. We don't have to worry about that. What else? Checks can be scanned. They still have to save them, and we'll meet up once every 2 weeks or so, and they'll hand us that kind of stuff. They have a little locked box in their van that's just locked. They can't get into it. They just drop it right on in there. And so, yeah, I mean, everything's in the cloud. There's really no reason why, like the service tech, why they have to come to the office to get their printout of their dispatch for the day. Like, here's all your calls. Go catch these. And then what happens when another call comes in that day? You're like, oh, well, come back to the shop to give me another piece of paper. So
Hmm. All right. Well, that's a perfect segue into things like parts, warehouse,
Yeah.
equipment. Let's get into that stuff.
So this is one that I really like because this gets thrown in my face a lot because you don't have a warehouse. So many storage units all over town and other towns too. So like you, when you think about most people's service area, they tend to a lot of time, not every time you see this more than I do because you have to ask people what's your service area whenever you're working on their websites and that type of stuff. But a lot of times you'll see like, okay, this is my office and my service area has to be right around the office.
Mhm.
And it has to be a circle that gets larger circumference around the office because the tech's going to come to the office and then they're going to leave from there. And we don't want crazy dispatch. Well, our technicians, they dispatch from home. So we can hire someone over here and then we morph our service area into like it's got like fingers, so it just goes around the areas we don't want and goes to the areas we do want because we hire a service expert in that area. Well, logistically, how does he get back over here to get parts and then get back over there? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we get a mini storage unit over there in this town, and we have our vendor restock the mini storage unit every week, once a week. And so then we get charged every time he restocks the storage unit, and it'll have one truck's worth of inventory in it, depending on how many techs are in that area. So that storage unit stays stocked. And then he can't pull anything out of that storage unit until he goes into his inventory app and says, I used this materials on the last job. I need to restock it in my van. And so then whenever we get our bill from the vendor and we look at our inventory program and the platform, and it's like, okay, well, that's not on there. What happens there? So this area here is our potential weakness here. We have basically one truck's worth of inventory that could be gone bad if it was in an area that was just one service expert was there and they like got disgruntled and wanted to go in and open it up and steal everything out of that. They could do that. So that's our pain point, but we've already figured out that the way to fix that is we have vending units that we're in the process of negotiating getting those put in, but they're vending units and each employee would put their employee number in, and so it would not release the parts until they put their number in, and then we know exactly what parts were pulled out by what person, and so that does away with them being able to steal everything, at that time.
That's awesome. Have you guys ever had any issues like that? Like, did you learn the hard way in any of those areas, or have you been fortunate based on
No, I mean, one of our core values is integrity first, and we live and die by our core values. So, and like people will lie to you during an interview, and you'll get somebody and they'll pull the wool over your eyes, that. And then a weekend you're like, oh yeah, this is not. And the way that I do it is like, I don't tempt them to do something wrong, but if they come to me and say, well, why don't we just not worry about that right now? Like, let's just brush that one under the rug, or we don't really have to do all the processes to start the system up correctly. I'm like, are you sure that matches integrity first? Like, nobody's watching. Are you doing the right thing? And you're like, no. And then, so if they bring it up to me again and they're like, okay, you got to go. You're going to, like, if push come to shove, you're going to steal from me. Like, that's just what it is. So, yeah, we haven't had a lot of issues like that, but our culture is really tight too. The guys in the field, they'll call you on your crap faster than I will. Like, they'll call you out so fast. Like, that's not safety first. That's not integrity first. Like, you need to go. And they'll call me like, this guy's got to go. He's going to kill our culture. And so it's like, okay, cool. Go on.
Let's keep going down that path. And then I want to make sure we come back to one of the things that you had said earlier, which was like trash removal. Like, what are you doing with that stuff afterwards? So, but let's keep going down this culture path for a minute. And so you said the guys in the field are really tight. It sounds like the rest of your team is really tight, but nobody's physically in contact with each other most of the time. How are you building that culture? How are you building relationships between service experts that don't see each other at the shop?
Constant communication, competition, and weekly breakfast meetings. So
you're doing physically one day a week you're doing a breakfast meeting.
Yeah,
maybe
except
outside
during the
of
summers. During the summers, we'll take right now, not right now. During the summers, we'll do once a month. So because it gets so slammed, the guys actually get antsy at those meetings because they're like, we don't want to be here. We want to be out in the field working so that we can go home at a normal time. And so that's one thing. Another thing is the guys, they don't get more than 4 service calls a day. And this is more in the business side of things, how to run a profitable company, slow down to make more money. But it goes to culture also. So they only get 4 service calls a day. That's max. If a call comes in and if a call comes in at 8:00 in the morning and they have 4 service calls on the board already, it's considered an emergency call. It's an after hours call. Even if we catch it during the middle of the day, it puts 5 calls on that guy's board. It turns into an emergency call, but you're going to catch it in the middle of the day only because the location makes sense to stop here instead of going there and then coming back. So, but if you catch the emergency call, it's the service expert has to agree on it. They have to agree to take the emergency call. Plus, we charge an extra $100. So our service rate fluctuates depending on load and everything. So but it's typically $89 for a consultation fee. Once it becomes an emergency, it becomes $189. That $100 goes to the service expert and it goes to his family because we're taking time away from his family to take care of somebody's air conditioning heater. And so they accept the call, they get an extra $100. And so we just, on the next paycheck, that $100 goes on their check. And so they know, like that's just, that builds into the culture. So they know that we're taking care of them. Like we're not out to make a dollar. We're not there. Like, yes, we want to serve the clients, but we also want to serve our number one client, which is our service expert. And so they know that. They know they can come to us with anything. Like we have a momentum gauge that is, it's basically the red light, green light, yellow light emoji on your Slack, because we communicate through Slack, and which is a communication app. And so as soon as they get to the job, we will send that emoji 15 minutes after they arrive. Then we send it at 1 hour after they arrive, and then we send it at 2 hours after they're there, and then it progresses that way. So each hour we send it again. And so they have to immediately reply with a green light, a yellow light, or red light. So are they at the green level? Are they at the yellow level? Or are they at the red level? If they're at yellow level, we'll send them a text back like, hey, what can we do? If they're at red level, immediately myself or Julie one call immediately. And so it's like, okay, we're going to call and we're going to take care of your needs. If I need to go somewhere, I'm going to the job site. So it's instantly. So they know that we're checking on them constantly. And it's not a phone call, but it's just a quick emoji. How are you doing? Red light, green light, yellow light. And so that helps with the guys' culture too. But it's deliberate, constant communication. Sending them funny videos, them competing against each other. They give each other crap through the Slack messages. So we have one channel that's called Banter, where you just banter with each other, and it's just goofy stuff. And so, really it's the perfect job for an introvert that likes to go out and work with their hands. But extroverts do great too. I mean, we have one guy that's extrovert and one guy that's an extreme introvert, and they both thrive with that role.
That's cool, man. Have you ever had any issues like overcoming, like maybe you had a really good service expert that was new or you were about to bring on? Have you ever run into any issues on that side of things, being remote, where they had concerns, or maybe you hired somebody that you thought would work that didn't work? I'm just thinking like people that are maybe contemplating going more this direction, when they think about their service experts. Like, is there something that you've seen that definitely doesn't work with this position. I mean, I would think it would actually open up more opportunity for technicians to hire really good technicians, because they would have the opportunity maybe to live a little further away, work from home, support their family, whatever that is. But anything on the pro or con side that you've run into on the technician or the service expert side?
So one of the cons for a brick and mortar is that, like I was talking about, that service area that it's kind of out there, where so if we stayed in Savannah, then if I hired someone in the city called Statesboro, that's like an hour's drive, a solid 45 minutes to an hour drive. Well, if I hired somebody in Statesboro and then I could market in Statesboro and he doesn't have to drive to Savannah every single day, like he doesn't have to come there. Why would he come to Savannah? Because other than to catch a service call, like there's nowhere to come to Savannah to hang out. Like you do everything virtually. So why not start marketing in Statesboro now? And then another tech gets hired in Statesboro. And then all of a sudden you're like, what? Like my service area is just morphed into 80 square miles. And now I have more service experts in those areas. And so, and then you kind of like can close the door between those 2 hour-long places. And there's the pain point of putting all the miles on the vehicles, which is kind of null point when it's a service van anyways, because you're driving all day. But that goes back to us only catching 4 service calls versus 12 service calls. But you don't have to worry about them driving into town every single day and the fuel expense that comes with that every single day. You just start marketing in that area. I mean, granted, it's not going to happen instantly unless you had some killer PPC ad set up or some LSA stuff set up by Wit Digital. But then you could come
I'll take the shameless plug.
And then you could just turn that stuff on, and then now you have ads in Statesboro. But so if you're going to try and do it organically, it might not happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So you might have that pain point for a second, but then you start morphing into that area. So it's really a pro, in my opinion. A con, if there is a con, is you have to be a communicator. You have to be an over communicator. You have to debrief after every single service call, because there's not somebody, I mean, yes, granted, we'll see them at the end of the day. But they don't come to the office the next morning for us to say, hey, yesterday you screwed up on this service call. Like, look how you wrote this. This is stupid. Like, you messed all this stuff up. Like, you don't have that ability anymore. So now we debrief after every single service call. So as soon as the service expert is done, before he clicks complete, before he leaves the driveway, the dispatcher is on the phone with them, debriefing from the service call. And so it's a training opportunity. We can train on the spot at that point too. Like if we get a red flag and the dispatcher's like calls me or messages me over Slack and says, hey, you need to call so-and-so. I got a huge red flag. And so I call debrief, and then we go through the training process instantly right there.
That's awesome. And I can hear some people maybe thinking like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a lot of work and a lot of talking, but you mentioned a great point. You've got to be a communicator, both on your side, on the owner side. Also, the people that you hire have to be communicators. But the one thing that I'll point out to people is that even though some of this stuff may seem like an additional amount of time, a big additional amount of time, look at the flip side of it, of running a virtual company where you're not driving to an office every day. You don't have staff driving to an office every day. You're getting back so much more time. So before anybody sits there and thinks like, oh my gosh, I could never do a debrief after every call, think about all the other time that you're saving. Mm-hmm. And also, I guess the quality of work, right? Because if you're training every single time, mm-hmm. that technician's quality is going to be, it's either going to go up really, really quick, or you're going to find out really quick that they're not a good fit.
Exactly. And that's happened before where somebody has like come in and said they thought their skill level was a lot higher than what it actually was. And so as soon as we started doing the debrief, and we do everything over Bluetooth, like all of our tools are Bluetooth. And so like our diagnostic equipment is all in the cloud, and everything is technology related. And so like you can't fudge any of this stuff, because you're not writing down a subcoolant superheat number. Literally, you're taking a screenshot of a Bluetooth instrument, so if it's right or wrong. And so it does away with a lot of the human error aspect of it. And doing that debrief not only has it's great for interacting with each other since you don't see each other in the morning, and training, but also money. Like it generates a lot more money because you're like, oh, did you, because it's a full on checklist. Like, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Did you ask for a review? Did you, and so, all that stuff. And if they didn't, then they go back in and do what they were supposed to do. And, so the client satisfaction, shoots through the roof when you do that. And then, you make more money. And so it wins in every aspect other than, yes, your CSR has to talk for a few extra minutes, to a service expert, but what harm is that? Honestly, if you have a good CSR team, but whenever you we're talking about this and we're talking about it and it's taking a long time, but when it's actually in action, it happens so fast. Like you don't even think about it. It's just a natural progression.
And it's one more way where you're building culture because your CSRs are talking a lot more to your service experts. So it's creating that bond where, they're watching out for each other. They're building their relationship. So there's a win-win there too.
Yep.
All right. So we've gone through pretty much most of the process. I guarantee you people have all kinds of questions. I can hear it now. Like, wait, what Bluetooth tool are you using? What is this? Like, so I think maybe we'll just see what questions come up with that later and maybe talk about that in a follow-up. But let's talk about the end of the day, the end of the call. Like, I got all this trash. Mm-hmm. How are you dealing with taking out the literal trash?
Yeah. So all of our vendors, we have agreements with all of our vendors. We can use their dumpsters. So it's one of the conversations that we had, like, hey, look, we're going to use you over this person if we can throw our trash in your dumpster. And like a lot of vendors, they're like, no, you can't throw trash in our dumpster because every service tech would throw the trash in the dumpster. Well, we just negotiated it with okay, we'll use you, but we have to be able to throw trash in the dumpster. For those techs that never are around a vendor or, anything to do with that, we'll get dumpsters at the mini storage units. So they'll always have parking spots at these units where you have the mini storages at, and we'll have a dumpster just put right there with our lock on it. And so you can get that and then dump it once every 2 months or something like that because they're not going to fill it up that fast. And that's how it's taken care of.
Oh, well, I guess that was easier than maybe I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple.
Awesome, man. So I think as we kind of start to wrap up, I mean, is there anything else that you can think of that we missed for somebody, maybe just specifically in these times of coronavirus that is overcoming challenges, or maybe somebody that says, hey, on the tail end of this, I desire to become a virtual or a remote company. Anything else that you can think of that we haven't talked about?
Just be patient, and ask that your team be patient and understand that, they may be stressed out a little bit too. I know that there's a lot of people that have talked about there's been a lot of talk about doing away with positions, because I have a friend of mine at the New York Times, and she was like, they're going to do away with half of our staff because they're going to figure out that we can run this magazine remotely. Like, what now? Like, now I don't have to stay in the office and like, I'm going to lose my job. And so there's going to be people that fear that throughout this virus. If you can run a company efficiently, remotely and virtually, they're going to fear that they're going to lose their job. And then just reassure them that that's not the case. That's not your goal. It's to run more efficiently and to make you more happy. And even if you keep the office aspect, so one thing that we don't have, for one, is a non-negotiable. It's an instant fireable offense. But another is you don't really have to deal with it anyways because it's remote. Is gossip. So gossip is a non-negotiable with our culture at all. And the way gossip is defined is if you talk about anything to anybody and they can't solve that solution, solve that problem with a solution, then that's gossiping. So if you're just talking to them to talk to them about some nonsense that they can't solve, that's gossiping. So you don't have that when you're virtually, because you have the direct communication with the right person. You don't have the office, water talk type stuff, and the trash can talk for the service experts. And so it becomes where, like, when you see each other, it's not the negative stuff, it's the positive stuff, because you're hanging out and having a good time because you haven't seen each other like all the time. So
that's awesome, man. That's so in line with what I believe, and even our core values at WIT are. Gossip does not. That is just a huge waste of time, and it's such a culture killer.
Yep. Yeah, it will ruin. You'll get cancer in that culture so fast with one person that comes in with gossip, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. All right. Well, awesome, man. Well, Tersh, thank you so much for coming and hanging out on your podcast and
letting having me.
Yeah, letting me flip the tables a little bit. I think this was a super cool idea, and I know that it was. I know that there was just a massive amount of value in it today, and what a perfect time to talk about this in a time where so many people are forced into doing more stuff like this. And I know that this is going to help a lot of home service companies run their business better, build teams in the face of something crazy going on like right now. And I'm going to go back to the exact thing that we started with. I think the number one thing and one of the most important things that I took out of this is having the intention and always just asking a question or a better question about how can we do this. So when your intention is, hey, I desire to be or intend to be a virtual or a remote company, and that's the only intention you have, asking really great questions around how do we solve this? How do we solve this every time something comes up? I just think that was so spot on when you said that. And, the other thing is be patient, right? If you really desire to do this, the great thing is that you have proven over a long period of time with a very successful company that this is possible, and it is possible to scale to a lot bigger than most companies will ever get. So there's really you've gotten rid of all of the excuses. So if somebody out there intends to be a virtual or remote company, it is very possible for you. And Tersh just knocked it out of the park with a bunch of ways to do it. So learn from what he did well, learn from where they made mistakes, and learn from where they corrected those, and have fun. I don't know, Tersh, how do you and your podcast? What did I miss?
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Service Business Mastery Podcast, the podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. Until we talk again next time, have a good day.
What's up? So one of the questions that I most often get from audience members like yourself is more information about how to learn more about running a business, just in general, the education side of things when it comes to the business world, the service business world. And I'm super excited to be able to share with you the opportunity to go to this awesome event in Las Vegas. If you are ready to take your contracting business to the next level, you got to attend this event. It's called EGIA Contractors University. It's their annual event. It's called Epic 2021. And it's one of the most highly anticipated educational events of the year for home service industry. Epic 2021 will take place over October 28th through 29th at Paris, Las Vegas. If you've never been, which I'm one of them, I'm super excited to go there. And I hear that it's amazing. Just this venue alone is really awesome. So the event is actually going to feature celebrity keynote speakers such as Damon John of Shark Tank, John Taffer of Bar Rescue. I'm sure you've seen the show, at least the previews of it, so you know who these guys are. And then also Captain Sully Sullenberger. He's the airline pilot from The Miracle on the Hudson, which was a really cool movie. If you haven't seen that, check it out. There'll be breakout sessions that are delivered by legendary industry experts, access to best-in-class product and service providers, dynamic networking opportunities, and an unforgettable evening party. You can even come and hang out with us on Media Row as we record Service Business Mastery Live. So if you ever wanted to be on the show, ever want to watch, just come hang out and chill with us on Media Row. You can also get $50 off registration if you use the code TERSH50 at epic2021event.com. Coupon code is TERSH50, and that's spelled TERSH, at epic2021event.com. You definitely do not want to miss this event. I look forward to seeing you there.